Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, and this is your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to do a weekend weed review. We're going to wrap up with some top news stories, including the vape debacle. There's Caribbean cannabis we're going to be talking about, as well as a Senate hearing for cannabis banking. On the line with us is Dan Kimmis, our CBD correspondent with Good CBD Products. So there's a vaping crisis, according to MJ Business Daily. They're talking about the pulmonary illness epidemic related to e-cigarettes and cannabis vaporizers, black market or legacy market. So there's 6 lives, apparently throughout 33 states that have adversely affected vape sales. So in California, Colorado, Nevada, and Washington, sales have declined significantly since the first vape-related death was reported in late August, which we had predicted on the Talking Hedge. So the takeaway, the MJ Business Daily's takeaway, is a regulatory backlash expected and predicted by several industry insiders is already underway. I wonder if they were referring to us. The Trump administration is openly discussing a federal ban on flavored e-cigarettes. The governor of Michigan is already committed to a prohibition. I believe New York is also talking about that. I read that somewhere else. So a lot of backlash, and we kind of got some flack about the hyperbole. Where I don't think it's hyperbole. I think some businesses, if you don't prepare for this and you don't have enough SKUs as sales dip, then you aren't going to be in business very long. It doesn't take long for something like what we see in Oregon a couple years ago, where they put an all-out ban on solvents, and if you didn't have rosin in your SKU, you weren't selling anything.
Oh my gosh! As a small business, I guess, historian, right? Sure. Again, if you're running hard and if you're making bank and you're diversified, then you feel a minor impact and you shift some resources. If you're, on the other hand, in the margin, right, like so many of these businesses, so many of our brothers and sisters in the cannabis space, and all of a sudden your core revenue stream is truncated. I don't mean to laugh. I just mean it's such a tumultuous business. It's like any business where sudden chaos equals, again, for some businesses, great opportunity. For other businesses, a death knell. And again, I'm sorry, it's as simple as once people start dying, I think they're up to 7 people today. Okay. I mean, it's a dang tragedy. And again, you can't help but think that, who wouldn't predict a regulatory, outcome immediately, really? Again, this is going to be it's a new phase, a new age in our industry, brother.
Mm-hmm. I also mentioned in the Cannabis Business Times when they interviewed me that it would lead to higher regulations, higher barriers to entry, and eventually bankruptcies. What we're starting to see is a huge, steep decline. There's a chart with MJ Business Daily with vape sales and recreational markets, and it's down 29% in California. Nevada is down 19%. Colorado, 14.5%, and then Washington, 14.6% down in sales since that the initial report. So it's definitely hitting much faster actually than I thought.
Oh my gosh. And again, if you've ever been in a sales-based business, one of the things that doesn't go over well is decrease in performance. You go in and say to your manager, yeah, I sold 25% less this month than last month. And as a general rule, you're either sent packing or told, look, you got one more month, homie. Again, companies, sales-based companies, and when you look at vape pen hardware or carts, right, all these different components and such that really are, nobody makes any money selling one. It isn't about selling one, right? It's about run rate and consistency and all of that. Again, that somebody would accuse the Talking Hedge, your Cannabis Business Podcast, by the way, of hyperbole? No, I don't think so. Again, I think this is literally a true crisis, potentially an existential crisis for a lot of these companies.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And some have taken an additional step. So Dockside in Seattle, rec store, has taken anything that's been cut or diluted with propylene glycol or other additives, which is nice. And then another rec store owner, a co-owner of hashtag cannabis, said that she believes that these products in the rec stores, regulated, tested rec stores, are safe because the vast majority contain only cannabis, and that Washington has a rigorous seed to sale tracking system, providing for safe products. And then on top of that, I believe that with Washington, the Uncle Ike's has taken an additional step, and they're testing every single cart they have. Their normal program is they randomly test a couple of products once a month, and just ensure that everything is legit, like it says on the package. But they've taken this extra step to test literally everything.
We know the seed to sale system in Washington, the quote unquote rigorous tracking system. I mean, excuse me while I, just kind of stare blankly, right? And like, well, certainly, okay, maybe, okay, in the press, okay, really, the marketing side. It is a complex industry with regards to everybody trying to make a dime. Because again, if you're in the margin, you're getting squeezed, brother.
Right. And it's easy to kind of get squeezed out. There was a Massachusetts testing lab that was fined $250,000 for improper cannabis disposal. I don't know many startups that can, live through that kind of fine. And so, new emerging markets trying to figure it out. Good luck to
go
that.
say to your funder, right? Go say to your funder, yeah. Thank you for that last round. I had to use a big portion of it to go pay a fine. Mm-hmm. See what happens, right? You think your funder is going to write you another check?
So speaking of funding, there's cannabis banking proposals. It's not going to go anywhere at least until next year. However, what is neat is that the cannabis banking bill appears headed to a landmark U.S. House vote. So according to the Marijuana Business Daily, the measure would enable financial institutions to serve the cannabis industry and ancillary companies without fear of federal punishment. And so there's a House Majority Leader Hoyer, a Maryland Democrat, who intends to put the Safe Banking Act to a vote before the end of September, which is going to be phenomenal. That could change everything. So the vote for the Safe Banking Act, which has been expected for some time, coincides with the chair of a key Senate panel expressing key interest in advancing that issue as well. So Senate Banking Chair Michael Crapo, an Idaho Republican, wants the committee to vote on marijuana banking bill by the end of the year in the Senate. So between the House and the Senate, it looks like the banking opportunities are going to be real, which is phenomenal, because I'm looking forward to the automation opportunities, pre-rolls, joints, blunts, whatever, and scaling and international opportunities with that kind of financing. We already reported on Citigroup and Goldman getting into the game officially. There's BlackRock has already done it. So it's here.
So yeah, well, it's funny in that whole interconnected vein, right? So I was talking yesterday with somebody who moves capital around. Okay, they were telling me about their lobbyist. Okay, that they use, and then they were explaining that actually there's spillover concerns about the timing of it all with the air quote vape crisis actually creating, literally having spillover effect all the way over to things like a banking vote, right? Because it is all interconnected, and that whole whoa, is this industry moving too fast? We need to slow down and look at this. Those kinds of things are actually happening behind the scenes in this, again, moment of chaos. I don't know what you want to call it. So.
And speaking of chaos, Massachusetts is having some issues where there was 4 business owners that exchanged $600,000 to the mayor. So essentially the mayor said, hey, if you want a license, just give me $600,000 and I'll make sure that happens. And so he was finally busted by, I think, the FBI or whoever. But this has been going on for a really long time. It was discussed up at the International Cannabis Business Conference in Vancouver, and everyone was like, yeah, we've been seeing that for like a decade.
Corruption, right? The C word. again, I don't know how you weed it out of this industry, but let's face it, there is so much opportunity in this industry that a lot of people will cheat the curve, right? They'll just cheat the curve.
Right. Moving on to other news, Utah is likely to expand their program there. They're going to up their dispensary licenses from 7 to 12, hopefully increase business opportunities. And then Jamaica, they're ruling for commercial medical marijuana exports. So speaking to some people again up in Vancouver, BC, Canada, Jamaica is, kind of a popular place, I guess, in the Caribbean. And a lot of people are trying to move there, but the locals are not really having it. So they want to make sure that there's some social equity and that all these white guys in suits are coming down there taking advantage of the Bob Marley thing.
Well, you've never really seen, a flood of opportunity present itself. I mean, I can't think of a similar moment in my lifetime. Okay. I'm in my mid-50s now, right? Where there wasn't a market and all of a sudden there was worldwide potential. And this is where, again, if it isn't Jamaica, it's Colombia or Puerto Rico or, on and on, looking at some of these locations that really are, when you start talking to the cannabis operators or the business operators, do seem to be some very interesting things, Chronic, with regards to staying ahead of the curve, because one of these days you are going to be able to ship internationally, everywhere. It's coming. It's coming.
So this article says that the local industry is too small to sustain large cannabis businesses. So what they're doing is expanding the rollout for export of medical cannabis later this month to look for long-term viability and attract investment. So they're wanting to ramp that up as soon as they can in order to kind of get into the European market with GMP or good manufacturing practice, more quality certificates. And, I was talking to a lot of people in Vancouver again about Jamaica and saying, why aren't you going to Puerto Rico? Everyone's trying to get into the US and Puerto Rico is that perfect spot. So what we have here is a chart from MJ Business Daily about Puerto Rican sales for wholesale medical marijuana increasing. Now, the advantages of doing business in Puerto Rico are simple. They don't have congressional representation. So being a U.S. territory, they're Americans, but they can't vote. And since you can't have taxation without representation, there is no income tax there. I talked to a few people and even kind of raised my hand and spoke in front of a couple hundred people and said, you just had an international panel and didn't even talk about Puerto Rico. It's the only place in the world Americans can go and not be forced to pay income tax. 4% corporate tax cap, 50% tax credits, and 100% tax exemptions in some cases. And so all these people are talking about Guam and Jamaica. I'm like, you guys are insane. 98% of all CBD companies will be out of business if you don't have an entity in Puerto Rico, whether that's a bilingual call center or research and development or otherwise, especially if you're in California. I mean, forget about it. That tax rate there is ridiculous. So looking at the wholesale cannabis market in Puerto Rico is increasing. I know that, having been down there last year, that there's some turmoil, there's some issues, but even after the hurricane, San Juan is good. Problem is the agriculture and the transportation infrastructure is terrible. You do have 20 years though for Act 20, so I would look into it. Contact us here at the Talking Hedge if you want some more information. But essentially, Puerto Rico is still a young market. They know that edibles are a top category for retailers there. The article goes on to say that they'll have to put an increase in output from existing brands or supplement output from new brands in order to keep up with supply. So that's all a good sign. Seeing the same thing in California or Canada, where they're trying to make edibles that are going to be available October 17th, but there's not going to be enough product in order to make that concentrate. And again, the concentrates they're able to make after October 17th are butane and propane and all that. So exciting to see what the Canadian companies do and whether or not they go into Puerto Rico.
So take me through this for a sec. So now October 17th, all of a sudden in Canada, you can get different source material for making your edibles. What's the deal with regards to the concentrates?
So the only concentrates that have been available since the legalization have been CO2, and I think ethanol, alcohol.
Okay.
So they can't use.
So there's been limited production styles that you can use.
Correct. Yeah. And same with certain edibles, you can't have, and it's crazy up there. They have 10 milligram minimums and per dose and only 30 per package. So, and they don't really have a medical program anymore. Just like everywhere else, they just disappear. They get rid of that stuff. So the packaging, the waste, I mean, what happens if you're used to 100 milligrams? All of that stuff is crazy. But there's been a limited supply, a limited production run. So they can start manufacturing these other edibles, whether it's butane, propane, or otherwise, as of October 17th. But you're not going to see those products until December. It's going to take a while to get them approved and everything else.
Supply chain, again, time and again on the ground. You know, this is one of the things I love about being in the field is that the education that comes from watching somebody, you know, make the bottle of soda or make the pre-roll and then realizing what it takes to actually get that to the store so that I could go buy it in these different jurisdictions, and how, you know, in the beginning in Washington, you know, that was its own conundrum. It's kind of sorted out now. Geez, these days you could actually probably, you know, watch your pre-roll go from, you know, being rolled all the way out to the store. In Cali, no, man, what a mess, right? In Canada, oh my gosh, what a complex thing. Again, I love this industry just because it's got so many good, interesting stories. It's hard on people, but it's got some really interesting things going on, right?
Yeah, so I definitely expect more Canadian companies and U.S. companies to go into Puerto Rico. So this article from MJ Business Daily says that several U.S.-based companies have already taken the opportunity and announced plans to expand operations to the island, including vertical integrated opportunities and infused product manufacturers. So lots of opportunities that we've got. So you can contact us and ask.
Question for you.
Yeah.
Question for you. So if I'm a can of business out there, and I don't really know what you just said, but I kind of know, right? You said something about a tax advantage in Puerto Rico, right? If I go put part of my operation in there. So if I wanted to dial you up and ask you a bunch of questions and all of that stuff about that, what would I do?
You'd email me at josh@thetalkinghedge.com and ask me what the business advantages are in Puerto Rico. Essentially, if you're in California, increase your profit margin 16% if you end up relocating there. It's that simple. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is The Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't.